balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swing and a drive, deep left field. It's his way back. Walk the ball. Chris Taylor.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined tonight by Matthew Moreno. Matt, Dodgers win 7-4, down 3-0, no problem. We're going to get into Mookie Betts' return to Boston, all of that kind of stuff. But just from a baseball perspective, go down 3-0, win 7-4 pretty comfortably by the end of this one. This feels like these victories keep piling up for the Dodgers.
Yeah, definitely. And, it was I didn't necessarily think it would take until the sixth inning for them to sort of get going. So that was a little concerning. But then, yeah, when you look at it kind of at the end of the night, it is, like you said, kind of, a prototypical win from the team that we've seen this season.
Yeah, I see some people in the chat noticing I am not in my normal spot. We're on vacation, but hey, we were going to celebrate a Dodgers victory here and do a little post-game show. Let's talk a little bit before we dive in, because the storyline here was Mookie. It's his first time back in Boston since the trade. Talk to me about your thoughts on he did a little media availability before the game. There was obviously a lot of conversation leading up to it. He had an interview with Bobby Nardaya that was an article that was posted about this could be everything, this could be nothing. What did you make of kind of what Mookie said before the game? And then we can get into his sort of reception in Boston and how he played.
Yeah, I was interested to see how this was going to go. Mookie obviously he began his career with the Red Sox, and it's not so much that he just began his career there, but a team like the Red Sox that have a pretty good reputation, especially, among I know that the fans can kind of the players will acknowledge that the fans can really get on you if you don't perform well, but honestly, I think Dodger fans can be the same way. So I was curious to see how he was going to react sort of emotionally, I guess mentally, if you will, kind of, being back in Boston for the first time. His comments leading up to it, obviously, on his podcast, his interview that he did with Kike Hernandez earlier this week, the podcast he has for Bleacher Report, he admitted to being a little nervous about going back just because it had kind of been so long. One thing that I thought he was pretty consistent about was saying, he's looking forward to kind of seeing all the people who are still there, whether it's clubhouse attendants, Red Sox front office personnel, those types of security, those types of people. Because, he obviously, I mean, it's out there. It's clear that the roster has changed significantly since he last played there. And that's what he reiterated then in his press conference before the game. And honestly, I thought he handled it well. I thought he said, pretty much all the right things. He embraces who he was as a player with the Red Sox and what they accomplished. But he, by that same token, said he's very happy with the Dodgers. And I think one of his direct quotes was that he wouldn't trade it for the world. And so he is, and what I thought also came across and sort of separate to the specific question you asked me, but related, I think, is Mookie told Kike that he is, kind of in a different place now with the Dodgers, that he's definitely more comfortable than when he first came. And so I think, the timing of it, maybe in a perfect world, he might have believed that he wanted to go back to Boston sooner than he did, just with the scheduling. And obviously now that MLB has the balanced schedule. But I think where he is mentally just with the Dodgers in his personal life, I think now was kind of good timing for him to go back where he could really balance both worlds that he has experienced.
Yeah, and obviously it makes it a little bit more fun just from a theatrical perspective that he's the first batter of the game. And so there's sort of the build up too. I remember, I'm home visiting some family and we were going to do something. And it's like, hold on, I need to see Mookie, the first batter of the game, and how it's going to be, how he's going to be received. I expected a standing ovation. It's obviously complicated when your name is Mookie and the chat is Mook, because then it's sort of mixed. But I mean, overwhelmingly positive reception from Boston. It felt like even Alex Cora cheering. You saw some guys in the field for Boston with smiles on their face. It was a great moment. And hey, the pitch clock didn't ruin anything, Matt. The umpire didn't try and keep count on how long everything was taking. He let Mookie take off his helmet, show some respect, pay gratitude towards the fans, everybody that was in attendance, and then get on with the game. So cool moment for Mookie, as people in the chat are commenting. Not necessarily quite as maybe emotional as Freddie Freeman's, and thankfully we're not going to have any crazy articles written this week about whether or not Mookie responded correctly to being back in Boston. But I just thought it was a great moment. And again, it's not his fault he left. I mean, every interview he's done has been, hey, I wanted to be here. I never imagined myself leaving. So no reason for fans to be upset. So I'm glad that Boston kind of handled this the right way.
Yeah, I will add the one sort of complaint I have is I'm pretty sure the Red Sox played a tribute video for Mookie, and I think it also included Ryan Brazier since he's there as well. Which I mean, I guess Brazier was on the World Series team, so it kind of
What
ties in.
about JD? JD doesn't get the.
I think the way they must have gotten around it was since JD's on the IL and not out there, and Joe Kelly's not out there, that they weren't going to.
No love for Kike?
Anything for Kike. I thought that was a little odd. But the biggest complaint, like I was alluding to, is that video hasn't been shared on social media, which I think is typical. Like the Dodgers, I'm pretty sure they shared theirs. I mean, it helped that it was at Dodger Stadium, so we were able to record it for everybody and put it on our YouTube channel when Bellinger came back. But I think that would have been nice for the Red Sox to send out, and maybe they'll get around to doing it. But it hasn't happened yet. Which in this day and age of social media, I just thought that was a little strange.
Well, maybe it's like our guy Daniel, who's in Boston. He wasn't happy about maybe the how up to date the stadium was. Maybe we've got social media that is on par with the amenities at Fenway Park potentially.
Perhaps.
I loved it. Daniel in our group chat said, less than flattering things about Fenway Park. And Matt's response was put it on Twitter, basically. And to Daniel's credit, he put it on Twitter. So shout out to our guy, Daniel. He went after the Braves this morning. He's going after the Red Sox today, just opening himself up to everybody, which I respect. But let's get into the actual baseball that was played. Mookie Betts has the ovation. It was a great moment. Then the game gets going. Dodgers go 1-2-3 in the first. Alex Verdugo, one of what seemed like 100 familiar faces that were in this game. First pitch of the game from Lynn, torched to right field. It's a 1-0 game. Trevor Story adds a 2-run home run in the bottom of the second. And before Lynn has 4 outs, he has already given up 3 runs. The good news for Lynn, he did settle down a bit, gave up a bunch of base runners, didn't strike anybody out. But those 3 runs, the only 3 runs that he allowed from that point on. Dodgers crawl back in the 6th. And again, it's 3-0. You're sort of just waiting for the Dodgers to get going. And sure enough, guess who's right in the middle of it? Mookie Betts, whose MVP odds, by the way, continue to creep down. It was 15-1 when me, you, and Blake talked on Sunday. This morning, it was plus 350. And after tonight's game, who knows? It might be going the right direction, even more so, especially with Jeff Passan and the national media getting on board now. But anyways, Mookie, a leadoff double. Freddie Freeman, a single. Will Smith, RBI double off the wall. Max Muncy, an RBI ground out. And then Kike Hernandez, a 2-out single to tie the game in the 3rd. And then more of the same in the 7th. Bush walks, Mookie walks, Freddie Freeman with an RBI double. Will Smith can't get the run across with 1 out. But again, another 2-out hit. Max Muncy this time, a 2-run double, gives the Dodgers a 6-3 lead. And at that point, Matt, I'll pause right there because I know there's a lot of conversations. Dodger fans, once we get to the postseason, they love to talk about how bad the Dodgers are with runners in scoring position, how bad they are with 2 outs, et cetera, et cetera. For the Dodgers to kind of blow opportunities with 1 out, twice they had a runner at 3rd with 1 out, and Will Smith and David Peralta couldn't get the ball past a brought-in infield. And so then it's left to 2 outs, and yet both guys, Kike Hernandez and Max Muncy, both come through clutch. These are the types of games, these are the types of things, Matt, that it feels like the Dodgers continue to do. It's even when things aren't going right with 1 out, the guy with 2 outs picks him up, and all of a sudden a 3-0 ball game is 6-3 in the span of 2 innings.
Yeah, and I think the bigger aspect to that is who was involved. Obviously, Mookie hitting the leadoff double. And I know you're focused on 2 outs, but Mookie hitting the leadoff double.
Yeah,
Freddie Freeman getting his hit, like that's expected, right? Those are the superstars. But for Kike, and again, like I when the Dodgers traded for Kike, I thought, okay, like yes, he had a terrible year with the Red Sox this season. He'd been struggling, to kind of dating back to last year. But I thought there was some potential there. I think there is something to comfort level, and he clearly, I think, enjoys being in LA. But fact of the matter is, the Dodgers acquired him to hit left-handed pitching, and so anytime Kike gets a hit off a right-hander, it's just like extra, like it's gravy, right? And he did that against the Guardians. All 3, his 2 doubles and home run, was against right-handed pitching. And so again, tonight, not only did he come up with a 2-out hit, but it was off a righty again. Max Muncy specifically, he's been scuttling, and I know he's got a little bit of a track record of being a clutch hitter at times, if you will, but he's struggling right now in the field, at the plate. And so for him to also, contribute with 2 outs, it definitely was nice to see. And so that, on top of, like I said, the fact that the Dodgers are getting the 2-out situational hitting, who it was coming from was certainly encouraging as well.
Yeah, coming into tonight's game, Kike Hernandez against right-handed pitching has an OPS over 1,000 since coming to the Dodgers, almost 1,100. That number will go up after tonight. So, I mean, to your point, the flip side is I joked about Ahmed Rosario. He has not had the same success. He keeps getting put in against righties, and he's hitting about 100. But Kike Hernandez is getting opportunities against righties, and he continues to produce. So, kudos to him for getting through it. So Dodgers take a 6-3 lead, head to the bottom of the 7th. Lance Lynn still in the game. Some debate about whether or not that was the right decision after the first two batters both get on. You and I, though, Matt, as we were texting back and forth, both didn't really have much of an issue. I know his final line, he ends up giving up 10 hits, plus the walk, which I believe the walk was the last batter that he faced. But in the end, it didn't feel like he was necessarily – I know there were runners on, but it didn't feel like he was necessarily getting hit around. I could see if they had taken him out, I wouldn't have complained. I also think this is one of those moments where I'll just give Dave Roberts the benefit of the doubt and say, if you thought he deserved to be left in, I think you had enough of a case where I'm not going to jump all over you for it.
Yeah, I think at minimum, you definitely let Lance Lynn start the bottom of the 7th inning. Like, that was no problem. Then at that point, like, if you go batter to batter, then I would have felt like, okay. But again, like, I don't think he was necessarily left in, like, quote unquote, too long. He was coming off like extra rest. I think he was on like 6 days. Is what it ended up being because they pushed him back from the Guardian series. I think another factor is the Dodgers, on top of having to play unexpected doubleheaders recently, they are in a stretch of playing like supposed to be 13 games in 13 days, basically. And so, that comes to bullpen management as well. And so, if you could potentially push your starter a little bit, then you do it. And I thought that it was fine. And honestly, this isn't hindsight 2020. Had the game gotten away from the Dodgers because of the bullpen, I would have said, Lance Lynn pitching into the 7th inning was still fine. Like it wasn't results driven at all. I just think, it's kind of fun. Like Dave, I feel bad for Dave Roberts a lot of times, but especially this, because if he pulls a guy, he did it too early. If he leaves him in, he trusted him to. It's like it's a lose-lose situation for him sometimes.
Yep. And he leaves them in. He gives up 2 base runners. Bruce Dog Gratterall comes in and nearly got out of this jam without allowing any runs. If not for Max Muncy making an atrocious throw to first, he should have just eaten it. But Justin Turner grounds to third. He steps on third, tries to get the double play, and is about 8 feet wide and bounces the ball to Freddie Freeman, allows a run to come around. But aside from that, Gratterall gets out of the jam. They come back out in the bottom of the 8th. Gratterall is in. Maybe Gratterall got left in too long. You could make a case here, but Gratterall gets all the way through. I believe he leaves with 2 runners on, and Alex Vesia comes in to face Alex Verdugo after Gratterall gets a strikeout. And Vesia, maybe his first pitch, I think it was his first pitch to Verdugo, gets lined into right field. But it was hard enough and right at Mookie Betts that the throw coming in, despite being down, the Red Sox third base coach makes the right decision to hold the runner at third. Well, former Dodger, always a forever Dodger, Connor Wong, didn't see that the third base coach was holding the runner at third. So as he rounds second, he gets halfway to third. Freddie Freeman makes a great cutoff, makes a great decision, basically gets him caught up in a rundown. Miguel Rojas tags him out. And instead of bases loaded with 2 outs and Alex Vesia in and trouble brewing for the Dodgers, instead it's the opposite. They get out of the jam right there, and the Dodgers escape with a 2-run lead. They tack one on in the top of the 9th, and then Evan Phillips works leadoff runner on, but a pretty easy 1-2-3 inning after that. And the Dodgers come away with a victory. So give me kind of, Matt, biggest storylines from this one is a question I always like to ask. Is it, we could say Lance Lynn struggling. Is it Mookie Betts returning to Boston? Is it Freddie Freeman dominating? We're going to get a player in the game here in a moment, but give me kind of like what sticks out the most to you about the game that we just watched. And folks who are joining us live, by the way, on YouTube or on Facebook, throw your thoughts in the chat and we'll put some of our favorites up on the screen as well. So biggest takeaway, biggest headline from the game that we just witnessed.
Oh man, that's a great question. I'll go Freddie Freeman. I'm still here type of headline. Obviously Mookie, deservedly so. Like this series, this game specifically was about Mookie's return to Boston, and I get that. Of course, there were Alex Verdugo threw his name into the hat early on, and that was funny to see. But then Freddie Freeman, he's kind of hit a little bit of a lull for his standards, if that's what you want to kind of call it. And so to come out, with a 4-hit game. Yeah. Go ahead. Was it an RBI double or 2-run double? Whatever. I think RBI double. It's a reminder of Freddie Freeman is also still very good. And what I enjoyed about Jeff Passan's tweet that you alluded to this morning, getting the Braves fans upset, is he focused on Mookie, Acuna, and Freeman.
Yeah, so
nowhere to be found was Matt Olson, who,
Nope.
like I joked with you guys, if you ask the Braves fans, the MVP race is down to Acuna first, Matt Olson second, and everybody else, third, fourth, fifth place. And so I think it's another reminder that, look, Matt Olson is having a great season, but ultimately he's not Freddie Freeman.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you there. I think storyline for me would just be kind of what I alluded to. The Dodgers getting it done with 2 outs. In both of the situations, in the 6th and the 7th, they put runners in scoring position with 1 out. And both times infield pulled in, I mentioned it, Peralta and Smith can't get the ball out of the infield. And that's just such a gut punch, especially because I joked about how Dino Ebel seems to be holding everybody at third base, no matter where they are. It's like, don't worry, 1 out, we're definitely scoring. Well, he's been right lately. But for the Dodgers to have the gut punch of they're down 3-2, Peralta can't get the ball out of the infield, can't get that tying run in, and then for Kike Hernandez to come back and get the RBI single to tie it. And then the very next inning, again, they go up 4-3, but they have a runner at third on a Freddie Freeman double, and Will Smith can't get it out. And again, you're like, gosh, just tack on here. And then Max Muncy, of all people, the guy who it seems like, gets a productive out, by the way, in the 6th. I've got to give him a shout out for that because we've criticized him striking out in those situations. He gets an RBI ground out in the 6th and comes back by roping a double down the line in the 7th, and all of a sudden it's 6-3. So 2 out base hits for the Dodgers after not being able to get it done with 1 out. That's kind of my storyline. Just encouraging, like knowing that you're going to be in big moments, knowing that the pressure is going to be on. This is Fenway Park, and you could say, hey, this is a random Friday night game. It's AL versus NL. Who cares? Like, I feel like if you're playing in Fenway, it just feels significant. It feels substantial. Obviously, Mookie Betts' first game back. You're playing Justin Turner. You're playing Alex Verdugo, a bunch of familiar faces, Kenley, Jansen, everywhere you look. It just felt like in a big spot, guys kept coming through. I love that it was Kike in Boston, by the way, and I love that it was Max Muncy, a guy that is sort of an X factor. Like if Max Muncy can be himself and get back to the Max Muncy peak or close to it, then all of a sudden the lineup that features arguably the 2 best players in the National League, shout out Braves fans, could also include Will Smith and Max Muncy and JD Martinez, and on we go. So I think that would be my storyline. It's just the 2 out situational hitting that the Dodgers were able to execute tonight. Let's talk a little bit about the pitching real quick, Matt. Lance Lynn, his final line, 6 innings, 10 hits, 4 runs, 3 of them earned, 1 walk, and 1 strikeout. This is a guy who's been incredible for the Dodgers since he came over. Not his best performance tonight, as you can see, with 10 hits and just 1 strikeout. But, this feels like, I joked, 6 innings, 4 earned every single day. You take it from Lance Lynn. This felt like that. And you could make a case that giving up 3 runs before getting your 4th out and then getting 15 more outs without allowing another earned run is a pretty good night for Lance Lynn.
Yeah, I think the hits are maybe, obviously, I think more than the Dodgers would like to see.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I think it was how he got there was a little funky. Like you said, the 1 home run in the leadoff home run in the first inning, 2-run home run in the second inning. You layer in Lynns. I just combined both of his names.
Linsanity. Were you going to say Linsanity right there?
I was not. You layer in Lynn's home run troubles this season. You kind of start to worry. Is this a start that maybe is going to get away from him? Credit to Lance now for locking back in and getting into the 7th inning.
Yeah.
I think ultimately, like, he's an interesting case to me. Is he going to be as dominant as we kind of saw in his starts? This was his 5th start, I think, with the Dodgers, or 4th. I've lost track of them.
Yeah, 5th, I think.
So is he going to be as dominant as we've seen in some of his other outings consistently? Probably not. Is he going to give up 10 hits several more times? Probably not. Like, I think ultimately he will land somewhere in the middle. And, with kind of the changes the Dodgers have made with him, I think there's reason to believe like you can trust him to be a reliable starter for you. And that's kind of the most important thing at this point.
Yeah, I mean, you look at his game log coming into tonight. It is his 5th start with the Dodgers. He's allowed 17 hits in 4 starts coming into this one, and that's across 25 innings. Just 5 walks in that. So he's allowing less than a base runner per inning coming into this one. Obviously, tonight goes the other direction. And even the strikeouts, 7, 6, and 9 in his first 3. Strikeouts, though, will be the one to watch. He did have just 3 strikeouts against the Brewers in his last start. So now he's got 4 strikeouts in his last 13 innings, which isn't necessarily the trajectory you want. But the ironic part is strikeouts were the one thing that were kind of a guarantee with this guy. He had one of the best strikeout rates on the whole coming into the season. So I'm not necessarily worried about his ability to generate swing and miss. I think the Dodgers are probably going to be able to find a happy medium between, hey, let's miss some bats and also maybe tweaking pitch mix and that kind of thing. So, again, hey, he did enough. I think somebody pointed out the Dodgers have won every single game that Lynn has started. So there you go. And again, he 8 innings for a team that had a doubleheader yesterday and has 13 games in 13 days. Here's yet another instance of Lynn getting you 6 plus, I guess you could say, innings before having to go to the bullpen. Let's talk bullpen real quick. Brusdar Graterol, a polarizing figure among Dodgers. I like somebody pointed out, by the way, and almost Red Sox, Brusdar Graterol. They rejected that part of the trade, and he ended up coming to the Dodgers instead of the Red Sox in the Mookie Betts trade, which is ironic again. All the key players, Verdugo, Connor Wong, and Brusdar Graterol playing key roles here in this one. But, again, not a guy that in that 7th inning didn't miss many bats, but got the job done aside from a Mookie Betts error, a Max Muncy error, no Mookie Betts errors. But ends the game with 2 strikeouts, an inning and 2/3, allows just 2 hits. Not the sharpest we've seen Brusdar Graterol, but and the guy just keeps getting it done.
Yeah, I think this one, like we were discussing with our staff, on one hand, Graterol was probably left in a little too long. On the other hand, it was kind of a lot of, weird things here and there that were really hurting him. But unfortunately, that seems to be the story with Graterol, right? Because he doesn't really miss enough bats, he's susceptible then to kind of the soft contact sort of creating havoc. I think this, he's no reliever is going to be perfect. And I think that's kind of what we saw with Graterol. If, we were discussing Dave Roberts' decision with Lynn earlier, and I felt like, how he used him was fine. If you want to nitpick any of Dave Roberts' decisions tonight, I think how long he stuck with Graterol would be where you can kind of point to. But again, I think, bullpen usage and all that stuff is a factor as well. Like, there are relief pitchers who I'm sure weren't available tonight that Dave we're not privy to knowing, because the Dodgers, although Dave sometimes will say, yes, so-and-so isn't available, but typically he tries to keep that information close to the chest. But it's, it was kind of a little bit of a prototypical Brusdar Graterol appearance.
Yeah, and Alex Vesia, maybe the surprise of the night was that Vesia is the guy they go to. I know it's against a lefty, but this is a guy who, it hasn't even really been a roller coaster. It was pretty much a disaster first half of the season, and he's been pretty good for the second half. And again, first pitch, I think he threw to Connor Wong, ends up in right field. He threw 1 pitch. So there we go. Oh, 2 pitches, excuse me. It was the second pitch he threw to Alex Verdugo, ends up in right field, but they get out of the inning. So Vesia is kind of the guy that didn't really do his job here. He gave up a single with runners on first and second, and yet we don't have to he lives to fight another day, so to speak. They go to Evan Phillips, shut down stuff. So, briefly, let's talk Dodgers bullpen. I mentioned on our Blake Trinan video we did a couple of days ago, commenting on his rehab assignment and how he's on the verge of being back. So if you missed that, check out the Dodger Blue 1958. I know there's something up on DodgerBlue.com as well. But with that in mind, since July 1st, this was a few days ago, so this was before the Caleb Ferguson closed the game the other day, Bobby Miller. Before that, the Dodgers had the best ERA in baseball from July 1st through, I think it was like August 21st. That's a pretty significant stretch of time. You come to a game like tonight, Lynn leaves with 2 runners on, and the Dodgers need to get 9 outs from the bullpen. The bullpen allows 1 run unearned because of the Max Muncy error. A pretty good performance from the Dodgers bullpen that over time has consistently started to get better and better. Like, I'm just curious, big picture. I'm not going to get into do you trust this guy or not, which we've done on Sunday night, but like, are you buying into the bullpen? Do you feel better like in tonight when Graterol comes in, knowing you need 9 outs from the bullpen, there's 2 runners on, and the Dodgers have a 3-run lead? Do you feel significantly better now than maybe you did 2 or 3 months ago?
Yeah, I guess so. Yes. But I think that was just because the confidence level in the bullpen was so low that that's where the biggest change is now. Like, I'm still not fully convinced with this bullpen. Like I've mentioned to you when we did, I don't know if it was the last Sunday show or 2 Sundays, more one of those. My issue with the bullpen is I know that the potential is there. We've seen it. These guys have track records. My concern is sometimes there is variance, and players don't always repeat performance year to year. Like, stuff happens, especially as our good friend Blake likes to say, you can't trust any relief pitcher.
None of them.
I don't fully subscribe to that theory, but there's some validity to it. Andrew Friedman has openly said that that's the most volatile position group on the team. Yeah. So my concern is, as much as the Dodgers bullpen has turned it around of late, what happened earlier this season still happened. And so, like, what I haven't been able to decipher and honestly just not sure of is, which group are we going to see in October?
Yeah.
That's the question that obviously it's $1 million. If anybody can answer it, Andrew Friedman would have been all years and said, hey, yeah, tell me who, we need to get. We'll do it by, any cost necessary, probably. Yeah. But that's my concern with the bullpen is I trust them of being capable of performing well, but I don't know if that will always show up.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the Evan Phillips thing. Like, you could put Evan Phillips into any game in any situation and we'd all feel pretty good about it. That's because of the consistency that he's developed. Even Gratterall, who you could say is probably their second best relief pitcher right now, is not a guy that you necessarily feel like every single time is going to be awesome. Ryan Brazier, another guy, ERA is great, but another guy who doesn't strike anybody out, which terrifies you in big spots. Caleb Ferguson, Alex Vesia, like, who's the lefty they're going to go to in those spots? Blake Trinan, reporting to AAA, and yet Dave Roberts also saying he's a long shot to contribute. That was the news that came out today. I mean, like, just all the different things that build up here. I don't disagree. I mean, I think we both agree that we feel a lot better today than we did 2 months ago. And I've long said, I think this group has enough good arms. I'm just curious to see over the next 3 or 4 weeks, who's in that group. Like, does Yency Almonte come back from the injured list? And does he come back and perform? Is Blake Trinan an option? What is Walker Buehler's role? Do Emmett Sheehan, Ryan Pepio, those types of guys get moved to the bullpen? Like, all of these questions I think will be answered. And I think it's all trending in a direction of, I'm going to feel a lot better about it then. So we'll see. We'll see how that plays out. Let's get to players.
Joe Kelly as well.
Joe Kelly
you always seem to leave him out.
I feel like his injury is the most confusing about what, like, actually to expect.
That's fair.
And maybe that's the most confusing is probably the wrong one, because how Blake Trinan reports to AAA and is a long shot to contribute down the stretch, like how those two things happen on the same day, that's the most confusing. So apologies to Joe Kelly. Hopefully he's back soon. Because he looked incredible before going out there. So, all right, let's get to player of the game here. Players of the game. We do a little bit of a podium, first, second, and third place. I'll look through the box score and give you some options here, Matt. Not that you don't know them already. Freddie Freeman, 4 for 5 with 3 runs scored and an RBI. You've got Max Muncy, 2 for 5 with 3 RBIs himself. On the offensive side, obviously Gratterall gets you 5 outs. Evan Phillips with a close, some options. Mookie Betts reaches base twice. That not outside of the top 4 guys. I mean, Mookie reaches base twice. Freddie Freeman reaches 4 times. Will Smith reaches twice. Muncy reaches twice. Aside from that group, the rest of the lineup did not have their best game. Five times reached for 5 through 9 in the lineup compared to 10 for the top 4. So I think number 1 on this list is going to be pretty easy. So give me your first, and then give me who you got second and third if you want to go there right away.
Yeah. So first, I'll go with Freddie Freeman, just because I think when you have that many hits in a game, you're making an impact. Either you're driving in runs or you're getting on base to score yourself. Second, I'll go with Muncy. I think his situational RBI was key, and then his 2-run double later in the game also important. And third, it's going to be a tie between Mookie and Connor Wong.
Connor Wong, I love it. I know. I think it was Laura in the chat who had Connor Wong for player of the game. So shout out to that. I'm with you. I think Freddie Freeman is number 1 on the list. I think Max Muncy is number 2 on the list. I think those two are probably the easiest. I mean, Freddie Freeman, I was watching and it's a freaking clinic. I mean, it's like batting practice for this guy. It's incredible how easy he makes it look to just slap balls into right field, slap balls into center field. It's a child's game to him. So he was incredible. 4 hits for him. As you pointed out, maybe he's getting a little jealous that Mookie Betts is getting all the MVP love and feeling like he needs to, hey, my odds have dipped. Mookie passed him in the odds since Sunday. So now Freddie's trying to maybe get back even there. But I'll go Muncy second. I think that's a good one. I mean, the 2-out double that kind of ices this one. He finishes with 2 hits. So kudos to him. And I'll actually zag a little bit, a guy I didn't really mention a whole lot. And for the most part, kind of a nondescript game, but Kike Hernandez gets the 3rd spot. That 2-out single to tie the game in the 6th was just a big hit in a big spot. And I kind of felt good for him to get cast off by the Red Sox in that place to get a hit off a righty, as you mentioned. Kiki Hernandez gets third in my list. Let's see some options here. Mike M has Freddie, which is fair. Ederico, Freeman, Muncy, and Phillips. Yep, that's a fair one. Nomo Fomo, I think, wants Muncy's defense for. Oh no, never mind.
No, he's saying Muncy shouldn't have been.
Yeah, that's fair. No, I know Muncy's defense probably least valuable player of the game. Is that fair? If we had the opposite of this, his defense.
Probably, but I mean, yeah, that's confused me since last season.
Yeah, I love the broadcast was like it's just a very unfamiliar mistake from Max Muncy. I'm like, I bet there's a lot of Dodger fans at home saying they're pretty familiar with what they see. So so there we go. Players of the game. Anything else we're missing storyline before we get to some questions here, Matt? Again, we talked Freddie Freeman, Matt. We talked Mookie Betts back in Boston. Anything else we need to touch on?
Not that I can think of. It's just kind of. It's unfortunate. I don't think Dodgers are going to see Kenley this series because of his hamstring tightness. It sounds like a couple interviews. He did one with Heidi Watney before the game on Apple TV, and it sounds like he's going to maybe test it with a bullpen session tomorrow. But other than that, like probably not necessarily pitching in this series. So he's a familiar face that probably won't get on the mound. I see this.
I thought
question
you were going to say
asking,
because they're never going to have the lead in the ninth inning. That's where I hoped you were going with that.
No, question about Justin Turner that I think his only time reaching base was on Muncy's air, right? He went 0 for 3.
I know he let's see. Justin Turner, 0 for 5.
0 for 5. Okay. Yeah. So that's that was his. Yeah, he flied out early and then Phillips struck him out in the 9th.
Yeah. There you go. All right. Well, let's get to some questions. All caps question in the chat, and we'll get to those. This is a good one. Mike M. Do you trust Phillips over Kimbrel and Jansen? I love that Kimbrel's included. Like, I trust about 6 guys in the bullpen more than I trusted Craig Kimbrel last year. And look, Kimbrel's been great this year. He was awful last year, and nobody trusted him. I was probably the highest guy on Kimbrel. I think I held on the longest. But Phillips versus Jansen is an interesting one. Because I would say, Matt, you've got to differentiate between early Kenley and late Kenley. Early Kenley, I think, was one of the best relief pitchers in baseball. You could make a case, one of the best relief pitchers in the history of baseball. He was really, really freaking good for a really long time. Late Kenley Jansen was the Kenley Jansen experience, the roller coaster of emotions. That said, I actually don't think it's super crazy to ask about if Evan Phillips belongs in that same stratosphere, because I think Evan Phillips is that good.
Yeah, I think if this is about 2023 specifically, and honestly, maybe even 2022, I'm definitely taking Evan Phillips over Kimbrel and Kenley. Maybe even I guess 2021 Phillips was still sort of developing into who he's become. So, yeah, if we're talking present day, then absolutely, I think Evan Phillips has the edge there. If it's career wise, Kimbrel was also lights out when he was at the top of his game. So then, like, if you're going peak level for all three of these,
Dodgers version Kimbrel, and then Kenley. That's why I said I think it's hard, because you go back to 2017, 2016. Jansen was a 3-win player and a 3.5-win player, which is absolutely absurd for a closer to have a 1.8 and a 1.3 ERA. And by the way, the FIP was 1.4 and 1.3. You will never see FIPs that low. So he was like peak. And you could go back 12 to 17 was probably the same. 18, 19, 20 was kind of where it started to go a little bit sideways. 21. That was his best year of that stretch. So I think if we're talking early Jansen, I've got Jansen ahead of Phillips. I think if we're talking late Jansen, 2018, 2019, 2020 Jansen, I think we're probably in the ballpark, and you could go either way, I would say.
Yeah. And I see Mike clarify that he's asking for present day. So yeah, present day, it's pretty easy for me, Phillips, and then pretty easy for me, Kenley, and then Kimbrel would be third on that list.
Yeah, although Kimbrel's so good this year, just bizarre. I just can't get last year out of my mind. Michael wants to know: does Austin Barnes start tomorrow's game, Matt? What do you think?
I don't think so.
It's a 1:00 game, right?
Oh yeah, that's right. But then also, well, no, it's 4:00 out there in Boston. It's 1:00 for us. Yeah, it's 1, and then Sunday is the 1:00 local. So I think Will Smith starts at catcher Saturday, and then we'll see Barnesy on Sunday to keep his hot hitting going.
Yeah, I see some questions in here about the Apple TV broadcast. I didn't hate it tonight. Going to be honest. I wasn't like totally dialed into every second of the broadcast, but I thought when they went to Heidi Watney and she was in different parts of the park telling stories, like I didn't think that was terrible. The quality of their video and that kind of thing has always been good. So I didn't hate the Apple TV experience, although I have the utmost sympathy for people that don't pay for Apple TV and couldn't watch this game. So I'm not defending that. I just thought from a broadcast perspective, it felt like things are headed in the right direction for Apple.
Yeah, in terms of actual broadcast production, I thought it was fine. I know people still sort of get up in arms over like the hit probability, reach base probability, all that. I just ignore it. I mean, it's weird. Like, I keep computers out of my game anyway, as you guys, as I'm sure our long-term viewers know. But in terms of, the booth, Heidi Watney, I thought it was fine. Honestly, the picture quality, like that's always great. Like even when the broadcasts, like in terms of 3-person booths were a mess, like Apple did at least have the video quality down.
Yeah. Michael wants to know, do you feel good about the lefties in the bullpen post-trade deadline? They're not in the top 10 guys in the pen. Our World Series chances basically hinge on whether Caleb Ferguson or Alex Vesia melts down. Ferguson has been incredible for most of the season, but has been kind of a mess of late. Vesia, sort of the opposite story, has been pretty good the second half of the season since his last time getting sent down. I think if you wanted to get really specific, this is clearly the weakest spot in the entire roster, I would say, is the lefties in the bullpen. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree. Honestly, I think that is going to basically, whether Ferguson or Vesia is the high leverage option. I think he's going to come down to whoever the hot hand is over these final, I guess starting right now would be too long. So maybe the final month or so.
Yeah.
From September through the end of the regular season, whoever is sort of pitching the best, and hopefully one, if not both, or, maybe Victor Gonzalez kind of emerges. Like he once was like the lights out lefty. Right. And so it's definitely an area of concern, especially if nobody sort of gets right. But, fortunately there still is time, and the Dodgers have opened an unexpected lead in the NL West that they have plenty of time to sort of experiment and figure out how that can sort of take shape for the playoffs.
Ryan Yarbrough, baby. Ryan Yarbrough could be their high leverage lefty by the time. I mean, honestly, he looks like he's probably nasty against lefties with that slider that's coming at you from no man's land. Scarlet Blue wants to know, any updates on Joe Kelly's health?
Not really. The last we heard from Dave Roberts, it was supposed to be a relatively short IL stint, kind of the minimum 15 days, maybe a little bit after that. He was supposed to throw a bullpen session at Dodger Stadium. I forgot what else was going on that I didn't get a chance to ask Dave, because there was just other issues that were bigger questions. And so I'm not 100% sure if Joe Kelly did throw his scheduled bullpen. And I'm not sure. He's not with the team. I don't know if maybe he went to Arizona to continue rehabbing there along with JD Martinez and some other injured players. But honestly, they're not gonna. It wouldn't surprise me if Joe Kelly's out until maybe probably another week, maybe beginning of September, just because, again, like, you don't need to bring him back right now. Like, the Dodgers are fine in the standings. So they're definitely looking to October with him.
Yeah. Laura wants to know, has Mookie ever said he wanted to stay in Boston? Mad Dog was having a debate on High Heat with the Boston Globe. I've seen lots of interviews where, I guess we could dance around. Did he literally say the exact words, I wanted to stay in Boston? Fabian Ardia's piece, which is up on The Athletic, makes pretty abundantly clear that his expectation was he wanted to be in Boston. He was shocked when he was traded, that even if he had gotten to free agency, it wasn't a foregone conclusion that he wasn't going to come back to Boston. I believe he's openly said he wanted to stay in Boston. Maybe I'm reading too much into his quotes. Do you come to the same conclusion that I have?
Yeah, definitely. I think, this, and I didn't see that segment on High Heat. So I think it comes down to semantics, like you just alluded to. Like, I don't know if Mookie has explicitly said, yes, I wanted to stay here. He absolutely has said, whether I've both read, seen in person and in other interviews, him say, I thought I was going to spend the rest of my career in Boston. So to me, that kind of strikes me as he probably did want to stay there.
Yeah.
That whole, contract negotiation, it's a weird scenario. Mookie was asked about it before the game tonight, and he basically said, if Chaim Bloom and John Henry, I think, is the owner of the Red Sox, or if they want to discuss it, like, they can explain it. If not, like, it is what it is. Like, it's in the past. I'm not going to necessarily go there. So reading all the tea leaves of everything, my impression is they were just too far apart on a number in terms of what an extension was going to look like. And The Red Sox probably weren't going to close the gap financially, is my impression. And so that's why they jumped ahead and decided to trade him. Now, I will say, I think the Dodgers did benefit from the pandemic throwing a ton of doubt into the industry and being able to sign Mookie to that contract extension, because it arguably, you look at deals now, like it's below market value. I mean, Dodgers have made out great in terms of that deal and with Freddie Freeman.
Yeah, incredible.
So yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know specifically if Mookie has ever outright said he wanted to stay there, but I think it has been implied pretty strongly.
Yeah, I'll answer this one quickly. Ederico, are you concerned with the 10 hits Lynn gave up as a potential problem? This can't happen in October. I said this earlier. If you go back and look at the outings, the 4 outings he had since coming to the Dodgers before today, he was allowing well less than a base runner an inning with the Dodgers. I think he'd allowed 4 or 5 hits in, basically 6+ innings on average. And so this is an outlier for now. If the next couple of days outings look like this, then I'll start to be concerned. But for now, we've got 5 starts, 4 of them. He looked really good in this department. In the 5th, he didn't. Again, it's 2 starts with no strikeouts. That would be the one that's starting to concern me a little bit. Michael wants to know, where's Gritty Scott and is Blake at IHOP? To be determined on Blake, but there is a little bit of a Dodger Blue reunion happening tonight. As soon as we're done with the show, myself, Matt, and Blake are all hanging out. And Blake did ask if the location we were going, if there was an IHOP nearby, for those that were wondering. So he might be at an IHOP, to be determined there. Let's see if we got any more questions. Here we go. We knew we were going to get an Otani one. Will the Dodgers be able to get Otani for significantly less money now that he has the arm injury? You've been on the you thought the Dodgers were going to tank for Otani, I believe was your language at one point. I know that was facetious, but the real question is, I want to ask you, like, has the UCL injury, the likelihood, I mean, it seems likely he's going to need Tommy John if he wants to pitch. Obviously, they can figure out how they navigate that with the hitting piece of this whole deal. But give me how the last, 72 hours has impacted Otani to the Dodgers this offseason in your mind.
So from a financial standpoint, I don't think maybe he's lost some money, but I still resort to, like, if this notion or idea that the Dodgers or some team can potentially, shave off $100 million or, 75 million, 50 million from a contract offer for Otani, to me doesn't make any sense, because you do that, there's going to be some other team waiting on the other side of the door, ready to hand in the check. So, has Otani cost himself money because of, and I don't want to, that's bad phrasing.
Cost himself money. Yeah.
Has the injury cost him money? Potentially, but like I joked on, somebody was when I was tweeting about it when the injury came out, somebody asked, I don't know, something about this, if there would be a discount. And I said, yeah, like he's going to go from signing for 500 million to 450 million. Like, yeah, that's like, I think that's the type of quote unquote money loss that we're talking. It's not going to go from 500 million to 325 all of a sudden, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So that's the financial aspect. Now, in terms of how it impacts the Dodgers, I think there is a significant impact here, because if you look, as much as, Bobby Miller obviously is on the right, the Dodgers are potentially going to be in a situation where they have a pretty significant need for starting pitching next season.
Yeah.
We don't know what's going to happen with Clayton Kershaw in terms of free agency. 1, 2, he's also getting older, so he's not necessarily your ace anymore, as much as he's had, a little bit of a renaissance season this year. Julio Urias, if he's back, great, but there's a pretty decent chance I think you and I have probably been in the same boat. Most of our staff, like, not necessarily expecting him back next year.
Maybe a 1-year deal.
Maybe. And so if you theoretically lose those 2 pitchers, and now Otani also can't pitch next season, that's significant for the Dodgers.
Yeah.
And so that's where I think the impact is for them rather than financially.
Yeah, I agree with you. The Dodgers need to hit Otani the pitcher more than they need Otani the hitter. And so if Otani the pitcher is the one who is injured, and look, everybody comes back from Tommy John and you're fine. But again, like, what are you signing up for? The counter to all this is, how many teams out there could afford to take a huge risk with that much money on a guy like Otani? The Dodgers and the Mets, probably the 2. So in some ways, I'm like, it's probably ups their chances, because a bunch of teams that can't afford to miss on Otani can't afford to sign him now. Whereas the teams that can afford to, quote unquote, miss on Otani, i.e. the Dodgers and Mets, maybe do. Obviously, the Mets have basically said they're building for 2026 or whatever number they chose at the deadline. So I don't know if this changed dramatically, but if anything, I would zag and say maybe this helps the Dodgers odds, because if the price does go down slightly, again, I think the Dodgers can, quote unquote, afford to miss on Otani and play the long game. I mean, they draft guys that are going with Tommy John surgery. That's obviously very different than paying him $50 million in year one. But I wouldn't be surprised if I don't think this changes anything. I'll just leave it right there. Couple more rapid fire questions here. Laura wants to know, should we be concerned about Outman again? Laura, he's just saving it all up. Like, we're going through the dip so that come October, November, it's going to be red hot James Outman, right, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is kind of just what you sort of get with a rookie. You know, he wasn't going to necessarily, I mean, some of the great rookies and great players of the game go wire to wire their first season. I think this is just sort of another dip with Outman. He doesn't look as lost as he did earlier, which is most encouraging.
Yeah. Craig wants to know if Kershaw is going to pitch Sunday since he only pitched 3 innings. I believe he's slated to pitch Tuesday, if my probable pitchers chart here is correct.
That is correct. Even though he had the short outing, the Dodgers aren't really going to take any chances and just let him make his next start on normal rest.
Thunderpants, can the Dodgers catch the Braves for the number 1 seed? As of tonight, they are 3.5 games back of them, 12.5 games up in the division, only 3.5 backs, 3 games in the win column from the Braves. Do you think the Mookie Betts MVP-led Dodgers can catch the second place Ronald Acuna Braves?
I think they can. If they're within 5 games, if they're within 4 games by the start of September, I think they'll end up catching them. If not, then I'm not sure if it'll happen.
Okay, I was trying to look up strength of schedule stuff here. The Dodgers have the 12th hardest strength of schedule coming in. The Braves have the 18th. Of course, they do have 4 games against each other mixed in there. So for what it's worth,
those will be huge.
Those will be huge. Those will be huge. All right, let's see if we got any more questions here. Sorry, I have to scroll up to keep where I'm at with questions, so I'm missing something with Blake.
I think he said it was a joke about the IHOP stuff.
There you go. Yeah. Okay. Jeff, would you order a chicken parm for Blake at IHOP even if he doesn't ask for it? No. You will never catch me dead uttering the words chicken parm, please, in an IHOP. So even if it's for jokes and Blake and to take a picture, you're not going to catch me doing it. Matt, I assume you wouldn't do that either.
I wouldn't, but what I will say is the restaurant we are going to tonight, I think, has a good one. So if you guys follow us on Twitter, keep an eye out. It may be a little late, but keep an eye out for a potential picture being sent out if one of us orders it.
Yeah, there you go. Blake, I mean, look, if chicken parm's on the menu and we're at a restaurant where it's actually like kosher to be ordering it and Blake is ordering something else, I feel like that's a huge L on his part. So, well, there you go. Let's wrap it there. I think we ran through the questions, so we appreciate you all joining us. Again, Dodgers win 7-4. Mookie Betts return to Boston and gets the big win. Freddie Freeman carries the day, player of the game, all around 4 hits for Freddie Freeman. Lance Lynn, not good, but okay. Dodgers bullpen, not good, but okay. And the Dodgers win a couple of 2-out hits from Kike Hernandez and then Max Muncy in the 6th and 7th. Put this one away for the Dodgers. Matt mentioned it. An early start for West Coast people tomorrow, 4:10 West Coast time tomorrow on Saturday, and then 1 o'clock on Sunday. Yeah. Right? No. 10
o'clock Sunday.
10 a.m. 10 a.m. Sunday. That's right. Everything's 3 hours ahead. So be on the lookout for that. Of course, we'll be back on Sunday night for DodgerHeads Live. So make sure you're on schedule to join us for that. You can subscribe right here and ring the notification bell on YouTube to join us for that. We'd love to have you. More of the same, talking a lot. I'm sure we'll be talking a lot more about Otani and the implications of that, as well as seeing where the Dodgers are at, recapping the MVP race again. We've talked about the odds, that Jeff Passan tweet that went out today. Lots of good stuff in there. If you're listening to this via podcast, thank you. If you're unfamiliar, this is available via podcast, DodgerHeads on Apple, Spotify, and Google. Check it out. We would love to have you join us there as well. That is Matt Moreno. My name is Jeff Spiegel. Oh, we got a super chat. We'll get to that. Here we go. John Bleeding Blue, we'll stop for you. Bryce Harper returned after 160 days after having Tommy John surgery. It was the quickest return from Tommy John in MLB history. So there you go. I believe Corey Seager had Tommy John surgery as well. Is that right, Matt?
He did. Seager was a bit of a unique situation. Was it Tommy John or hip that he needed for? One of them was first. And so because the timelines were going to be the same, he ended up just getting both surgeries at the same time. With Bryce Harper specifically, that it was his first one. 2, he's not a pitcher. 3, It was an extremely credit to him for accomplishing that. 4, and I know the Dodgers Otani is a DH anyway, but he was limited for, only taking swings for, I think, the first 3 weeks, maybe month that he was back. But it is, I get what you're saying, John, but it is, I think, different set of circumstances, unfortunately.
Yeah, I haven't looked enough into how that all plays. I mean, again, if he presumably he will get the surgery. So then it's just a matter of how long is he out. He could, I mean, by all accounts, if you're the Angels and he's potentially leaving in free agency, like you're going to try and let him keep hitting for the next couple of months and see what happens, which complicates this whole deal. Unless they can get a wink, wink handshake deal on a potential long-term extension and say, hey, let's just get the Tommy John surgery done now and lock you down. I mean, lots of variables here, but again, I mean, if he gets it, you should bank on him missing all of, if not most of, next season. Is there a 10% chance? What's that?
From the mound.
From the mound. Well, and I mean, but again, even Bryce Harper, like if he was out all that time, even from hitting altogether, right?
No, when Bryce Harper came back, he was cleared to hit. He had to DH. He couldn't play the field.
Got it.
So I think Otani, like if he has it late this year, I don't know, maybe he's not necessarily cleared to start hitting by opening day, but I feel like potentially like he probably would be. And that's, I'm sure, some of his thinking. I think just his personality type is he doesn't want to like give up on the season and just say, okay, like I'm packing it in.
Yeah.
I think no matter what, like I agree with you, he's probably going to have the second surgery. I don't see with UCL stuff. I know players try, PRP injections and different things. They don't seem to work out. So I anticipate a surgery at some point, and whether he has it now or at the end of October, he's not pitching next season anyway. So that would be my guess is what he's thinking. But yeah, we'll see.
There you go. We're going to learn a lot about Tommy John surgery because often, again, we're so used to this in pitchers, and then it's a pretty straightforward process. But when it gets to position players, and of course, Otani's the unicorn and all that. What happens when it's a pitcher and a position player and a DH at the same time? That's what we get with Otani. So thank you for the super chat. We appreciate that a lot. So that's Matt Moreno. My name is Jeff Spiegel. Again, this is Dodger Heads presented by DodgerBlue.com. Dodgers win 7-4. So enjoy the rest of your night. And as always, go Dodgers.